Welcome, welcome. Basically, this is going to be a video looking at the sliding and driving IL world records, kind of examining them, figuring out if it's possible to make it to the next second, how many mistakes with it. This is based off of seconds, Ingot, so milliseconds don't mean a thing. So these runs are allowed to have leniency, some of them. But yeah, we're going to look at how good they are. These sliding and driving world records, like the order that we'll be looking at them, will be in order of what I think is least the most interesting / impressive / whatever. So this is like a little mini thing, because I want to make a Heavy Iron's best times video, but I already made one before. I want to make another one. But yeah, this will be like the temporary thing, I suppose, for now. So you can see a bunch of videos at the top of my thing. Obviously, the 7 sliding and driving levels total. Also, there's one thing in between YouTube video. You'll see that later. So yeah, basically, this is like a little. I mean, it'll probably take me like an hour and a half to do this. I will be going over like some little things, because I'm trying to teach people. It'll also help with like mechanics of the game. The very first thing of note is that GameCube has the fastest driving, has the fastest paddy wagon. Also, NTSC, or North American, has faster paddy wagon than the PAL version, aka the European version. However, you'll still see the GameCube PAL version used a couple times. But yeah, on the sliding levels, it doesn't matter what version you're on. That doesn't matter, technically. But yeah, for these driving levels, you at least want to be playing on the GameCube version. For some of them, you want to play on PAL. But yeah, for this one, this will be NTSC. So let's start the music, because I forgot to do that just now. And I guess let's get into it. So yeah, this is No Weenie Parking by Vaz. Oh, I should look at when it was set. November 11th. I mean, the 21st of November, goddammit, yeah, the date said, yeah. 2022, so pretty recent, all things considered, although it's somehow May already. So already, a small little thing that's been realized is that driving through the oil is fast, and we just didn't do that before. But yeah, no, we do that now. Also, again, this will also be for, like, inexperienced players. You're gonna pick up these speed boost things. They're called nitros. When you use them, you can stack up to 10 at once, but you'll never actually stack 10. At least in ILs. Like, they give you short speed boost. So now, turning is kind of hard with this thing, especially on GameCube with the paddy wagon. But now you also need to keep in mind, like, nitros, like, when is the most efficient time possible to use them and stuff like that. Also, well, there'll be a little more as we go on. So you want to skip that one, that oil patch just then. You want to go to the left side here. This isn't necessarily fast. You can go through this path by here. But this, like, breaks even. Also, I actually found this. I can't remember who found the oil patch thing. It might have been Vaz. But I found that around this area, if you nitro, you'll get a big height boost off of this, and you'll save more time. So basically, one optimal place to use nitros, not all the time, but a lot of the time, an optimal place to use nitros is if you are facing a ramp, it is sometimes valuable to get as much out of the nitro as possible, and just before the speed boost ends, then you go up a ramp, because then it sort of pseudo-preserves your speed. So as you can see here, like, you still get a bit of speed afterwards. Now, the GameCube paddy is so fucking fast that nitros hardly even speed you up, so this would be more noticeable on Xbox, or, 360. 360 has the slowest paddy wagon for some reason. In case you're wondering, no, it shouldn't be FPS dependent anyway. Because driving levels on GameCube are 30 FPS, and on Xbox they're 60. Oh, well, a slower frame rate then is faster. No, because PAL's not faster. So, it's just really fucky. We don't understand it, really. Also, I should say this now, magnetic pickup is banned. There are 42 extra treasure chests in the game, and the 39th extra unlocks magnetic pickup. You know how Nitro's kind of magnetized to you? Like, it's like the hitbox, the range gets extended, like the triggers to touch them. They're banned because it would be a pain to set up a file collecting them all. It also means you wouldn't be able to practice grabbing the extras on that file if you're going to run 100% of all extras that day. And it just feels pretty uncompetitive and just removes skill, like, objectively. And, most people don't even know it exists, so it's, so it's banned, basically. But it would not benefit the sliding levels, it would only benefit the driving levels. Going through the oil is fast. I actually don't go through the oil. I didn't realize... Well, okay, here's another thing as well. Because Xbox, I'll be comparing this to, like, NTSC Xbox, because that's obviously what a lot of people run on, RTA. People generally nitro here, like, here, because it saves, like, 2 frames. Although, I think on GameCube it's not fast, or it breaks even. So basically, this nitro earlier would have not been used in an RTA run, and you'd use it here, but I think on GameCube it doesn't matter. I wonder if it's worth me driving through the oil. I should look into that, honestly. Learn something new every day. Yeah, because you still get a good line for this. Yeah, it might be worth it, because I kept going that way, and then I had to take a line here. Yeah, it's probably worth it. I don't nitro here anymore, I don't think. Okay, honestly, okay, this might sound really bad, but I can't remember. And then... Also, this is different from RTA. Normally, when you do the first weenie parking token, you have to grab 5 keys, but in the second and fourth token challenges, it's time challenges. So normally you'd be going all around the place for 2 laps worth, 2 laps and a tiny bit, to grab 5 keys, because they spawn the end level trigger. But you don't need to worry about that here, you just need to go around 3 times, so you're just doing... So you're gonna take the same path with this one on all 3 laps, just that, you do unlock a new path on lap 3, but it's not fast. Also, these turns are surprisingly hard on GameCube. You can see there the vase actually slowed down. I don't think he needed to. He definitely lost, like, a little bit from that. But yeah, no, it is hard. Also, another good place to use nitros is just after you lost a bit of speed. Not always, again. But when he turned... He lost a little bit of speed, and a nitro can be used to instantly gain the speed back. So keep that in mind. So yeah, that was definitely something to take into account. Now you could say, what's the point of watching the rest of this? But we gotta see if he screws up at all. He already starts off the lap with 2 nitros. Instead of having 1 left, he has 2 left, so now we need to see where he uses that nitro, for example. And if he just makes any more mistakes. We need it now, the world record's 243. We need to see if 242 is even possible. This time, he nitroed as soon as he landed. I don't really... Again, GameCube physics are different, but I feel like that's not worth it. I feel like some of that nitro speed might be potentially getting eaten up by the oil, but it's hard to say. It looks like he's still going pretty fast. I don't know. That might be a good place to use it, I'm not sure. You do that on lap 1 in RTA. I don't know, it's hard to say. You need to burn through. One of the issues with Weenie in the time challenges, honestly, is just how many nitros you have and just remembering to burn through them all because we're so used to Weenie 1. When I say RTA, I'm talking about, like, no pulse storage and stuff. Of course, in, like, 100% and all tokens, you do all the Weenie tokens, so you would, Although 100% is allowed to use magnetic pickup. And all tokens, well, I mean, it would be, but why would you pick up 39 extras for that? So you get a little more nitro leniency. Another thing of note, this nitro in particular sucks. Basically, its hitbox is not where it looks like. Like, it's, like, slightly off-center, I guess. So instead of having, like, a kind of like a circular or, like, a box range, it's, like, there's more of the hitbox to the right of it than there is the left of it. And you'd be fucking surprised how incredibly common it is to accidentally miss this one. And you definitely don't want to do that, so you don't want to cut the corner too good. Also, a ramp spawn, but it's not fast. That's where the 5th key is, but yeah, I don't know why it's... Yeah. I don't know why they'd have a 3-lap system where something unlocks on the final lap and is literally not fast. And we'll see this again. We'll literally see it again. In fact, we'll see it 2 more times in 1 more level. So, yeah. But yeah, it's looking like the rest of this is pretty good. Now we're just burning through the nitros. We'll see how this goes now. Of course, one thing that's important is also, like, the trip to get here. You know, the world record was 2:45 for, like, a while, and then it was 2:44, and then it very quickly became 2:43. Okay, so we're gonna look at this. That was a pretty high 2:43. Now, his turn at the end, towards the end of lap 1 was bad, but that's basically it, and I think that would have just gotten it down to, like, a mid 2:43. And looking at the rest of his movement, it looked really good. I mean, we don't... Maybe a tool assisted speedrun, which is, you know, being able to use, like, frame events, slowdown, save states to try and create, like, a theoretical perfect run. Maybe 2:42 could be possible in TAS, but I don't even think that. I think there's a good chance that even that is impossible. And if that's true, then 2:42 is just not happening with current strats. Or at least with current understandings. You know, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe we could find a way to, like, make nitros last longer or something stupid like that. Or to, like, make a paddy wagon permanently keep nitro speed or something really stupid like that. But realistically, do I think 2:42 is possible? No, I really don't. So why don't we use milliseconds? I should probably go over that now. Basically, the reason why we don't use milliseconds is because it would be inaccurate. And technically, we already have a little bit of a flawed system. However, it is as least flawed as it can be. So we use the in-game time. Basically, long story short, when you begin a sliding or driving level, the amount of time... So when the text box appears, that's, you know, and it'll say 0 seconds, basically. It'll say 0 seconds. The frame that text box appears... The time difference between the frame the text box appears and the frame it says 1 second is not always 1 second. In fact, it's hardly 1 second. For some people, it'll even be as drastic as 0.9 instead of 1 second. But usually, it's like 0.96 or something, so it's like a few frames. Yeah, basically, some people have a few frame advantage when starting out, when starting their run, and there's no way to actually tell. So, it is entirely possible that one of these runners only barely missed the time because they got a slow load-in. And it wouldn't even be the fault. We don't know if PAL is affected differently by this, but it's probably either the same or burns even more time. So yeah, and you could say then, like, oh, well then what about, you know, the in-game time is still technically inaccurate. Yeah, but, well, for example, with Weenie, 2:42 wasn't possible anyway. It could have started as early as possible and not made that mistake. I'm still confident the 2:42 wouldn't have happened. So, you know, what does that tell you? I mean, in this case, it didn't matter, but the milliseconds could have mattered. And yes, he made a mistake. You still need to play pretty damn good for the 2:43. You gotta understand, right? It's pretty hard to get used to these, GameCube physics. And, like, I'm the world record holder of most categories. I could match this time eventually, but I think it would take me a while. I really do. I don't think, you know... There are people who specialize more in short burst categories, which are essentially like ILs, or like really short categories like Cheap Stunt. There are people who specialize in those. You know, they don't, because they don't need consistency and they can just go fucking crazy, basically. Whereas with RTA runs, people generally favor consistency, the longer the run is. And I mainly run no pole storage, and it's an hour and 1 minute long. I could play this good, but I just don't think it'd be very easy, and hopefully that gets across, like, how hard these times actually are to achieve. And again, It's an order of least to most interesting, and this was the least interesting one, and I still feel like it was mild, you know, the time is impressive, and I felt like watching it was mildly interesting too. But it's only going to go way up from here. This is the only one that doesn't have a major trick. Every other one has at least one major trick, so that was Weenie. Congrats to Vaz on his time, it's pretty good. And now we are going to go to Sandwich Driving by Vaz again. And this one was set on the 27th of October, so close to Halloween. So this one is the very first... So Weenie was the second driving level of the game. This is the first driving level of the game. In fact, it's the first sliding and driving level of the game. Just, yeah. So, this one's supposed to be a tutorial level, so it's not actually very hard to drive through. The sandwich driving has gone through a lot of nitro routing over the years, but, yeah, basically... Well, it's also had quite a transformation. As you can see there, those turns are pretty hard. Like, you'd be surprised, right? So, Oofster used to have a faster sandwich driving than me. SD101, which is almost identical to this, by the way. To the IL, except for one big thing. And basically, his goal was faster than mine, so I compared the two goals, I put the gameplay side by side, and I noticed something. I lost like 10 frames or something on this turn right here. This turn, I lost like 10 frames. And he beat me by like... Actually, it was more than 10 frames, I think. I think it was like 12 or something. But yeah, basically, the amount of time that he beat my gold by was less than how much time he saved over me from this. So if I had just as good of a turn as him, I could have gotten the community best gold. You know, like, these turns really do matter, but in an IL setting, they matter too. And now we are about to see the first big trick. Well, in a second. I love that strat. It's crazy. So this is either known as park skip or park out of bounds, just whichever one you prefer. I like park out of bounds. So you need PAL GameCube for this. So if you saw earlier, this is PAL GameCube. So runs at 25 FPS. But what's the actual? Well, the paddy wagon's slower, so why would you play on PAL? It turns out that the less speed you get, the more height you get, which is especially notable for ramps and stuff. But in this case, the reason why it's necessary is because you get such a big bounce off, especially that rock, that you just barely have enough height to land here. So this is the thing that is not done in NTSC runs, NTSC Xbox. I believe PAL GameCube and NTSC Xbox's heights that they get are like around the same. I think PAL GameCube's might be slightly more. Might be wrong though. But this is not RTA viable. Like in the it saves like 5 seconds. It's not viable in the slightest. Not a chance. Especially because of how much time you would lose if you missed it as well. Fucking hell. But yeah, no. Oh yeah, one thing I should say. Driving levels are cursed with like these checkpoint triggers, right? Keep in mind that there's only 4 driving levels in the game, and, you know, this is not a primary racing game or anything like Mario Kart Wii. Basically, in these driving levels, if you miss one checkpoint trigger, they're all invisible. If you pass one, and you just never go through it, the finish line trigger will not spawn, so you can't beat the level. Why is the checkpoint system built objectively way better than a few racing games like fucking Cars and Mario Kart Wii? It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, no, this game's checkpoint system is not only sturdy, we've never been able to bust it open. You know, we have tricks, but the only reason why this one works is because you don't pass a fucking trigger. It's really stupid. But yeah, that is going to cause, like, a big hindrance. Like, there are a couple things that we just straight up cannot do, or that we can do, but they're significantly slower. This is not affected by it, but yeah, I still felt the need to mention that. But yeah, this is crazy. So this is only for ILs, individual levels. That was pretty good. The only thing is that he got a little bit of a hop when he landed. I don't think that's supposed to happen. That could have been done a little better, I think. Because I feel like it would, without that bounce, it would have been possible to, like, turn this way, like this is sort of angle. But instead, I feel like quite a chunk of frames were lost, unfortunately. Yeah, so, oh yeah, nitros are also often used on off-road, but they're not going to be used here. Not worth it, but you'll see why in a minute. And, well, yeah, you'll see another major thing soon. It's not RTA viable either, but we have our own RTA viable method. I should have gotten that up, actually. I should have gotten a thing of that up. An example of what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, here's the strat here. Oh, we got a little bit of a tiny bit of a bonk there. Saw that. Watch this now. Now, Park Skip was crazy, but this was crazier. So, yeah, that was pretty nuts. So, basically, that's why he needed 2 nitros, so that's why he didn't nitro through the off-road earlier. So basically, there's a very, very high invisible wall here, and that nitro was enough to just barely make it over it, right? Then, around here is where the checkpoint is for this area. You grab the checkpoint, and then you use this dirt pile to nitro back in bounds and get through to the other side. Now, the RTA viable method of this is nitroing on this dirt pile, landing in this area, nitroing across the dirt pile into the red building, then grabbing the checkpoint, turning back around, and then, yeah. NTSC Xbox can do this trick, though. It has been proven to be possible, but to call it not viable, it feels like underselling it. It will never be done. Like, this makes it look easy. Like, old ILs of this used to slow down for like an entire second or something setting this up, right? But somehow, someway, it doesn't even touch the trigger, just the invisible wall just barely avoids it. On Xbox, you'd be touching the top of it, barely. This trick is one of the hardest, like, in the game that NTSC Xbox can do. But even here, even in this setting, you just did Park Skip. So, you know, you're stacking, you know, a trick. Keep in mind, you don't just get the trick, you have to get it fast. So you have to stack getting the trick fast, and then playing good, and then getting this. It's fucking ridiculous. So, this will never be done on Xbox, but yeah, even here it's really, really hard. Also, this fucking ramp is so evil, you have no idea. Oh, this dirt pile. If you nitro at this sort of angle, there's a really high chance that the game will just throw you really far to the right and it'll push you back in bounds the wrong way. I know, because I know a lot from experience. The dozens of runs I've lost that way. Anyway, there's like fucked... Yeah, the collision's all fucked here, by the way, which is why that bonk happened and, you know, why you can even get it in the first place. That was a pretty major time loss, but, yeah, we're not done just yet. Still gotta see the rest of it. So basically, sandwich driving is just dominated in ILs, but like the rest of it's easy, but it's just those two things. So it's not hard to drive through like Weenie at lost time there. Okay, so right side. So there's a thing called right side and left side. This right path saves half a second over the left path, but this cycle of the bulldozer, or I mean the wrecking ball, starts from when you load the level. So, well, I'm not positive if it does on GameCube, but it does on Xbox at least. And it probably does on GameCube. So, even though he made mistakes, if he played as fast as possible, I don't know if this would be true, But if you play perfectly, there's a chance that he might have had to go the left side, in which case, like, half a second of his mistakes were just negated anyway, but I don't actually know. That was a good nitro, and then you want to nitro through here. And then finally, it doesn't really matter where you nitro here. Although, actually, because you got a lot of height from that, on pallet probably is faster to nitro there, yeah. This trigger, the more left you go, it's at like a 26-degree angle, I think Latte said. So you want to go as left as possible, unless your angle beforehand would have made it slower to just move to the right a bit, but yeah, the right. So, I don't think we knew this when Vaz did his run, but he should have probably moved a tiny bit to the right here, but he still was mostly right. He probably only lost like 2 frames or something. So this was a really low 207, and it is very obvious that 206 is possible, because again, even with the theoretical Wrecking Ball thing, like, okay, what would that actually negate? I mean, I guess it would negate that, but what you gotta understand as well, when you should not nitro. So, the reason why he nitroed there was because he lost speed, so it's like, oh, I'll gain it back. But this was a very awkward spot to nitro, and it probably wasn't worth it to nitro here. Because, I mean, maybe, but, like, he didn't wait until the bonking stopped. So, when he started nitroing, like, a little bit of the nitro was wasted, because even though it sped him up a little bit, it didn't speed him up as much as it could have, so I don't know if this is definitely the case, but I feel like it would have been more optimal to wait until he was done taking knockback. And it wasn't just that, it was also just, like, tiny things. Like, there was obviously this. And then there was, this, although I don't know how possible it is to actually avoid this, but I feel like it could have been possible to get a better line here. And, of course, I think finally there was this. So 206 is very clearly possible. Milliseconds at the beginning of the level or not. However, don't get it twisted. Even though this level is relatively easy to drive through, those 2 tricks are so bad that it makes it hard to, even if you execute them perfectly, like, you just so easily choke. Or, like, you might think you can do right side, but then the Wrecking Ball just barely fucks with you, and then you're fucked. Like, this shit is hard, and this is a huge step up from Weenie. So I'm not surprised that 206 has not been done yet. Like, it'll take a lot. It'll take at least not bonking at the sandwich or everything. Sandwich out of bounds, but it could take more, potentially. So, this is one of the most flawed runs of the 7, but you gotta understand, like, it's still pretty damn hard. The reason why it's ranked this low, though, is because A, 206 is possible, and B, there's a level similar to it that we'll be looking at soon. And it's actually even harder and cooler, but it has its own issues. In fact, we're seeing it right now, once again by Vaz. So that's kind of crazy, seeing 3 out of the 4 driving levels just be back-to-back. That's crazy. Are the driving levels cringe? Yeah, a little bit. They're mostly hindered by the checkpoint triggers, but don't get it twisted, though. These are very impressive. This one was set on October 10th, so this is the oldest one so far. Obviously all 2022, if I didn't say that earlier. So, the unique thing about this level is that it's sandwich driving backwards. You hear that right, it is literally sandwich driving backwards, but it's harder to drive through. There's more oil, there's hot sauce, there's like, statues and stuff falling, there's more TNT. It's harder to drive through, so it's already, and I kind of like the, you know, the atmosphere more and stuff, because this is the final sliding and driving level in the game, and basically, the idea with this is that, like, you know, Plankton's already taken over Bikini Bottom, and he's renamed it Planktopolis, and now you're driving back, you know, you unlock the paddy wagon, and then you just drive back to the Krusty Krab, basically. Whereas in sandwich driving, you were driving from the Krusty Krab to the desert. But yeah. So, again, this level is way more interesting visually, and it has a lot more obstacles. It's just way harder to drive through. And you can see that the record is actually slower for Knucklehead than sandwich driving, which is not the case RTA, but is for ILs. So, Okay, so a lot happens there. It has been proven, even on GameCube this should apply, it has been proven that nitroing here is not fast. I've timed it. I don't remember how much it lost. I think it was pretty close, actually. But yeah, nitroing here is not fast. So you do not want to nitro here. So he lost a few frames. Okay, not that bad. Then he gets hit by this thing. Basically, a statue gets destroyed, and I think that the eye falls out or something. And it's RNG, like, where it, like, moves around. So we got bad RNG and got hit. Now, getting hit, like, as in taking damage, does lose time. However, the paddy wagon speed is the same if it's 1 health or 3 health. You can't upgrade it beyond that, but there's no, like, paddy wagon upgrades or anything in this game. There's nothing like that. No vehicle upgrade. It's the exact same thing every time. But basically, when you take damage, you lose a few frames of speed, basically. So that lost a few frames. So now he's already... I don't know how many frames he's lost, but he's lost frames. Definitely a number of frames. Maybe like half a dozen frames, I don't know. But yeah, he got bad RNG. I would have just personally reloaded the level, but... yeah. Anyway, yeah, so... Also, losing health here can be bad, but there was a paddy, so he's fine. This eyeball can fuck you. It can get right, it can cock block if you get really bad RNG, but that was like... I mean, I say perfect RNG, like, it was basically as far away as it possibly could have been. But obviously, as long as you just can get through this corner, then it doesn't matter how close it is to you, as long as you don't get hit, but yeah. It's like surprisingly far away. Now, he doesn't nitro here, and I don't agree with this, because, again, we already proved that nitroing through the oil is not fast. And now he's lost even more frames because he doesn't have the nitro necessary to drive through this off-road. So basically, he just lost frames for no reason again. So now, we're down like at least like a quarter of a second. Also, he's playing on the PAL version again, by the way. So you can already tell some fuckery is gonna happen. This hop, it saves a quarter of a second. It's not hard. Basically, you want to go, like, really, really left on this. Like, more left than you think. Like, I've missed this so many times in runs in the past just from just not realizing how left I needed to go. You need to go really left. Although he doesn't go that left here, but that's how you make it consistent, is going very left. I don't think that's fast, but that hasn't been timed, so... I'm not gonna really comment on that. I don't know. It probably isn't, but I don't actually know. Now, this is debatable, but I personally feel like it's probably faster to drive through the little bit of off-road because you can cut the corner more. That's how I personally feel, but I might be wrong about that. Now, here's another thing. So, basically, he lost speed, and his reaction was to nitro immediately. However, that was also unnecessary. So... I should have had a thing for this, actually. I should have had a video for this. But basically, it's possible to squeeze in between the wall and the spikes. And I think it saves, like, point, like, 15 or something. It doesn't save a lot, but... yeah, it saves time. It saves a good amount of frames. And the nitro there was not necessary. But it's not that big a deal. But yeah, there have been like 3 or 4 instances so far. Yeah, there's been like 4 instances so far where he's lost frames. I think the reason why he nitroed there was because I think he thought that the reason to nitro after getting hit by the spikes in Weenie was to get back your speed, but no, it was literally for the ramp. I think he, like, maybe misunderstood or something, I'm not sure. Although, if you are gonna get hit by the spikes there, I guess it's good to nitro there. If you have the spears, he nitros, which RTA, you don't have the spears. But yeah, he's at 2 health right now, which actually doesn't matter. However... okay. It is faster to get hit by this TNT because you can cut the corner a lot more, but he could have cut that a tiny bit more, but it's not a big deal. And now, here's a big one. Okay, I think he should have cut the corner. I feel like it's probably optimal to cut the corner more. He did not get... he did not get middle door. And middle door is pretty damn big. You know, I'm gonna check something, actually. Yeah, okay. He did not get middle door. Middle door is RNG. It is just straight up RNG. There's no, like, oh, we don't know what the statistic or whatever. No, we know the statistic. Basically, the left door never closes, and then so it's just a question between the middle and right door. However, statistically, we've looked we've looked at it. We know this is the case. The middle door only opens 1/3 of the time, and it saves half a second. So, keep in mind, he's already been burning frames. And then he just lost half an entire second. No? Like, that's nasty. You didn't get good RNG. So, imagine, driving. There's also, like, the little bit of luck with, like, the eyes from the statues and stuff. And just driving good. And then it takes a minute and a half to see if your run's even fucking good. Like, it's stupid. And that's not the end of it. It gets way worse than that. He drives through the off-road, but I feel like it's probably not fast on NTSC Xbox. Because again, you get less height on the ramps, you lose in less time, and I just don't think it's worth it to take that much of a detour. Anyway, here's the big one. Yep, this level has it too. And you know what the crazy part is? It's even harder. Because if you remember in Sandwich Driving, the rock was pretty fucking big, but this time it's pretty damn small. You gotta bounce off this, get a huge height boost. Hopefully your turn is good, because again, it isn't just about getting the trick, it's about doing it optimally. So you gotta get a good, optimal bounce, and then you gotta react quickly, nitro across. And keep in mind, he bonked afterwards, and it wasn't very slow, but I bet it is possible to do it slightly faster. Okay, so NTSC Xbox does not have... You have to nitro here. So basically, what's optimal on NTSC Xbox? Now, this is really, really hard for some reason. I guess because the hitbox is probably also off-sync slightly. But basically, it's optimal. Instead of it coming towards you like this, you want to actually grab it instantly, and then nitro. Because then it'll just barely give you the speed to, like, go up the ramp before it runs out, so it's, like, super optimal. But on this, I don't know if it'd be fast to use it here, maybe not. I mean, he didn't use it, I don't know. Again, GameCube shit. Instead, he uses it here, because then he can preserve speed while going off of it. Yeah, so it's probably faster to do it here on GameCube. That was a really, really fast turn just then. And then finally, what I said about that nitro just then, it actually applies to this nitro no matter what version of the game you're on. However, well, no, he did actually get it. Yeah, so that's, like, optimal. So, from that mid-ish 214, it was like a 0.4 or something, it is very obvious the 213 is possible. So, yeah. So we know it's possible because it was like 0.4 or 0.5, a middle door lost in 0.5. But again, dude, imagine playing, like, perfectly, then getting the 1 in 3, and then getting into this trick that, like, never fucking works. This trick is one of the hardest in the entire game. NTSC Xbox doesn't even have a chance of doing it. Like, it's so bad, dude. Especially to do it fast, after getting good RNG. It's insane, right? And, you know, again, the fun doesn't end there, there's more to it. So yeah, there were quite a few mistakes, but 213 is very obviously possible. 212, I don't think so. I don't think it's possible, because, like, even after you fix all those mistakes, that comes down to, like, a mid-213, and I just don't think outside of those things you made any more mistakes than that, you know. I just don't think there's an extra half a second to save right now. Except for one thing. So this one probably is, I don't know, it's probably tied with Sandwich Driving for the most flawed one so far. But there is a really big trick, and I rank these based off of what has been achieved. But if this trick were done in the world record, I would have ranked Knucklehead significantly higher, like probably at the very top or close to it. So, this is what I got a YouTube for. This is Latte's 211 TAS. Now, it is a pretty unoptimal TAS, but it's still a TAS. So we know that 213 is possible, and then this gets 211. Oh shit, what does it do different? Well, again, it's an unoptimal TAS. This is here to show off something, and you're about to see what it is. It might be the hardest trick in the game. At least that's like quote-unquote RTA viable. Watch this now, right? It might seem like he's doing a bunch of fucking nonsense, but seriously, now you gotta watch. That is one of the most fucked things in the game, and it is very clearly one of the hardest things in the entire game. Now, you might be saying, what the actual fuck just happened? And I was thinking that too at first. And how is it even fast? It doesn't even look fast, but yeah, no, this task does it unoptimally anyway, but yeah. Basically, he hugs the left side to avoid a trigger, and the trigger that he's avoiding is an important one. Basically, there's like some fucked collision here when you don't pass through the trigger. So you gotta like get around triggers. Then you need to nitro off of this collision, get like a really good height boost, and get like a fucking perfect bounce off of this fucking thing. You just barely land out of bounds. Look at how close that was, dude. Look at how close it was. Like, a unit lower, and it probably wouldn't have worked. And then, right, you need to touch the trigger that was there. Then you need to go back in bounds and go back a bit. And then nitro off of this thing, which I think is also part of the trigger. I might be getting this info slightly wrong. Maybe the first part wasn't to do with the trigger, and this is, I don't know, but basically at least some part of it is to do with like avoiding a trigger. And then you get like a big height boost, and then you land out of bounds, and that skips like quite a big section. However, Latte did it very unoptimally. This was just a proof of concept. And this skips a couple of the things the Vaz like fucked up. Like they didn't even matter if you do this. I want to see how good his bounce was here. Yeah, wow, that was actually pretty fast. Yes, okay, so that was... maybe 212 is barely possible, because that was... Actually, nah, because Vaz didn't lose that much time from that. But yeah, no, that's what, like, if it's, like, really good, like, that's what it looked like. Although Latte actually... that was a bit unoptimal, methinks. What about the ending here? Again, this is a task, so it's not like an actual valid run, but proof of concept. And also, how... I guess this is like a mid to 11. But his, the setup for this trick was very unoptimal. He slowed down, so, you know, they already lost, like, at least, like, a second and a half. And bonked on that, and, like... Definitely could have turned better. Now, granted, this turn was pretty alright, but yeah, for the task, like, you definitely could have done better. Like, this is all to fuck. It's hard to say what time is, like, actually possible, but if we're just talking, like, human theory, I feel like a 208, or well, even if we're playing, like, as perfect as possible, maybe even a 207. But 208 is a lot more realistic if it's still, even though it's still fucking impossibly difficult. And I'd say the best humans would probably ever get with this is like 210, maybe. Again, speedrunning communities have been wrong countless times about like oh, this will never happen, or whatever, is too hard for humans, but, like, dude, this really is, like, this is a special exception. It really is one of the worst things we've ever seen. It is one of the worst tricks I've ever seen in a fucking speed game, at least in speed games that, like, I know, that I actually know, and, like, understand the mechanics and shit. This is so ridiculously fucking difficult. Maybe on PAL 360 this could have, like, some merit, but then, like, PAL 360 is really fucking slow, so, I mean, you know. But yeah, this shit is ridiculous, and it may never be done in a world record. It really is that bad. Vaz and Latte have really done a lot, but, like, dude, I don't see this happening. And this is why I don't want to make a Heavy Iron's Best Times video. Sandwich driving's unoptimal. Even with Knucklehead, the current strats are unoptimal, and then it's even unoptimal in the sense it's not doing a strat. You know what I mean? I want the Heavy Iron's Best Times video to be like, yep, all these times are perfected, it cannot go down to the next second. Like, as in, like, my video will never be outdated unless strats get found. Whereas this, like, this clearly, you know, two levels so far out of the 7 where, like, they can clearly be improved. This one even has an entire strat that you could do, but yeah, it's really bad. Basically, it may never be done, but hopefully it will be. The only person who's really tried it a decent amount is Latte, and he described it as a 1 in 20 trick, I believe. Although I don't know if he was talking about 1 in 20 to get it at all, or 1 in 20 to get it fast. If he's talking about 1 in 20 to get it at all, then keep in mind, right, you have to play good, then get the 1 in 20, optimally. So, if you get it fast, it's probably more like a 1 in fucking, like, 30 or something. Then, you need to keep playing good, don't choke, get the 1 in 3 middle door RNG, and then get fucking Park out of bounds, and then, you know, this is probably the hardest sliding and driving level in the game, just from this one strat alone. Keep in mind that the Park out of bounds is already quite a bit harder than sandwich driving. Oh, but it doesn't have sandwich out of bounds. It's harder to drive through in general, but it doesn't have sandwich out of bounds, so Knucklehead is easier. Technically, yeah, but the RNG would made it pretty annoying. And then this gets found. This is just on a completely different level from sandwich driving. This literally is sandwich out of bounds, but significantly harder and slower. It's so fucking stupid. And there's RNG in between the two massive tricks. So yeah, this is sandwich driving for big boys, I guess, if you want to call it that. But trust me, it is the worst thing ever. Alright, moving on. Now, this is the oldest one that we're looking at. So, this is Google Eyes and Smelly Knickknacks, or GESK for short. It is the first sliding level that we'll be looking at. Now, this record, there is a tied world record, and I think Latte's is faster than Kyoku's by some frames. However, Kyoku's got his first, was, like, so it is, like... In the case of a tie, whichever one was done first is considered, like, the world record by speedrun.com standard, which makes sense. Of course, here, because we do actual seconds, it's just a tie. But, yeah, no, in my eyes, Kyoku properly has the world record because he got it, like, pretty damn early. The fastest Xbox world record is mine, and this is notable. So, sliding mechanics are pretty different. You can tilt forward and back to speed up or slow down, and you have much more control of the tub compared to the paddy wagon, and you can even jump. However, there's no nitros, and corner cutting isn't as big of a deal because there's no huge bonking time loss or whatever. So, sliding levels, I don't know if I'd necessarily call them easier, but they're generally, I don't know, I mean, at least RTA, they have more tricks in them, but they're kind of easier to, like, master the movement in RTA. ILs, I don't know, I'm not sure, but... yeah, so... basically, this level is in 30 FPS, actually. Oh, well, I thought sliding levels weren't in 30. Well, this one is, because GESK is so massive that it's in 30 FPS. It's probably also because of the water effects and the electrical effect thingies as well, I'd imagine. Taking up a lot of resources on the GameCube hardware. The GameCube hardware fucking sucks. But yeah, basically, this is 30 FPS, and that does matter. Like, it isn't faster, but it is a lot easier. You definitely want to play at 30 FPS for this level. And you'll see why right now. That was nuts. So, what he did was a trick called Gesk Jumps. Bad name, but yeah. Basically, these are all one-frame jumps. So, he has Kyoku has a 30th of a second every single time he lands to press A. And keep in mind, like, he's doing double jumps for all of them to, like, minimize the number of one-frame jumps he needs to do. But that comes with its own, like, kind of bad side effect. And also, another thing as well, Kyoku doesn't have shadows working on his emulator for the tub. And the shadow is used as a visual cue for when you're about to land on the ground. It's not a good visual cue, and that's the other reason why these one-frame jumps are so hard. This visual cue for jumping on the ground, it sucks. Like, it actually sucks. Like, what is the actual, like, visual indication between these two fucking frames? They look the same. And that's the problem. Like, the tub, you know, in Rubber Dub, it's a bathtub. In Rockslide, it's a shell. It's a clam shell, and here it's Neptune's crown. But they're all very circular, and it's genuinely hard to see a visual cue for when they drop to the ground. And with the lack of shadows as well, that's only making it worse. Now, the reason why double jumping is a little questionable is because it makes it hard to, like, get a rhythm going. One-frame or two-frame jumps are a lot easier, like when you can get a rhythm going, which is why the first jump is always so hard. That's why this jump is always so damn hard, while the rest of them are just, like, quite... not easy at all, but easier in comparison. When you can do single jumps, you're getting the same height every time. You can't really necessarily properly guarantee that with it. And also, like, the way that, like, SpongeBob and Patrick just, like... I don't know, it's, like, the animation, like the crown... sort of takes, like, this kind of sloped angle, and it makes it even harder to, like, see, like, a proper visual cue for when they land on the ground. It's pretty fucky. And we're not even done. He purposely takes damage here. It is on purpose. And then has to immediately get more one-frame, and this is hard to react to as well. Like, this is hard to react to. And then you want to go off the right side, have, like, basically, like, no speed. Then get damaged by this, right? And then you only have a small window because you do get coyote frames. But because of this, you only get a few frame window to actually jump, and then the jumps need to be optimal. And you are damaging yourself on purpose, just for a strat that saves a second and is about to come up right now. Obviously now, like, trying to cut corners and shit as good as possible. But the reason why you do that here is to die here. So, basically, when you do guest jumps normally, you still have 3 health, and you have to drown in the tank. However, if you damage yourself up the slide, then you can just barely touch the edge of this TNT and die a lot faster, and it saves overall a second. And the other quirky thing about this is that if you touch the red wire, like, whatsoever, it checkpoints you to a higher part of the red wire. I don't know why, but it saves a lot of time. That's how you get, like, that's how you beat the Macho Time Challenge here, like, super easily, by the way. You don't even have to do guest jumps. You can just go around and then die, in the water where that red wire is, and you just beat the Macho Time Challenge by, like, 20 seconds for free. But yeah, so you spawn higher up, and then all it is at the end of this now is just good movement. That's all it is. This is ranked low because guest jumps have been known since, like, 2013 or 2014, and the damage boost thing is unique, but it had been theorized since, like, 2020 or something, and it was done in 2020. You you know, it's been a while, and Gesk will probably never ever get faster, spoilers. Also, you do want to jump to the right here, because, the trigger is on the right side. Like, it's faster to, like, look at how far away it is from the finish line, you still grab it. So that's optimal. Again, Latte time is a few frames faster, but Kyoku was, like, the guy to do it first. So yeah, also, the final thing, well, actually, there's a couple more things I want to say, but this is really, really hard. Like, you have to do a 1-frame turnaround, and, dude, RTA, you slow down a lot. Like, I would slow down around, like, here. I would slow down a lot to make it significantly easier, because what I care about is getting the fucking jumps first try, not fucking saving, like, an extra half a second. You know? Like, look at this visual cue. It's so bad. Look at it. But, of course, in an IL, you have to not care about that. But yeah, the reason why I noted my 103 Xbox time is because the jumps are 60 FPS on that version, so my jumps were a lot harder, but I didn't do this damage boosting shit. So, it's debatable which one's more impressive or whatever, but, because mine just doesn't do, like, two pretty hard things, but, or every jump individually is harder. But then again, you get to reset here so quickly that it's, like, you know. And I'm not even done. There's still one more thing to talk about. Basically, I need to stop saying basically so often. So, this game's 30 FPS, and even its 60 FPS are not consistent, right? And this is something I didn't really realize until recently, but, like, this game has a really inconsistent frame rate, and that makes 1 frames a lot harder. In Battle for Bikini Bottom, the game almost always runs at 60 with, like, no real issues, but this game is more poorly optimized. It doesn't really reach 60 that much. It kind of is, like, pretty high 50s, like 56 to, like, 59, or, like, 55 to, like, 58 or something, but, like, it ranges all the time. The reason why a rock-solid 60 matters is because then the time difference between each individual frame is supposed to be 16 milliseconds, right? 0.016 seconds. So 16 milliseconds. However, if the frame rate is inconsistent all the time, then what that means is that 1 frame, it could be 16 milliseconds, and the next it could be, like, it could be more than that. And not only does it make the game not feel smooth, which makes it hard to do visual cue-based things, it can even mean that the timing for the 1-frame jumps could potentially be different. So these 1 frames are pretty fucking hard. Especially with, like, again, the circular fucking crown. It's pretty bad, dude. Yeah, it's nasty. It's unforgiving. And this game, a lot of games that have areas that are capped at 30, like levels or like just certain areas, they often don't do it properly. And they will have really inconsistent timings in between, like, the frames. So again, one could be 16 and the next could even be pretty drastic difference. Which is why 30 FPS games like Super Mario 64 that were actually built for it feel consistent. Hell, Glover is 20 FPS, and that actually... I mean, I haven't played it yet, but it looks pretty smooth for 20. It kind of looks like 30. Super Mario Sunshine, it kind of looks like... Maybe not 60, but it looks higher than 30. It looks pretty smooth. And, like, that's... the thing. Movie 30 looks horrible because the devs did not... like... they don't process the frames properly or whatever, and even though it's locked to 30, the time gap in between each individual frame is terrible, so that's why it's really jaggy and horrible and inconsistent. Which is why these 1-frame jumps are so hard, even at 30 FPS they're hard. Yeah, sure, they're still harder at an inconsistent 60 compared to a solid 30, but, like, it's still pretty bad. Like, this shit is still hard, and, you know, there's not... you know, the jumps were nailed basically as perfectly as it could be. I mean, you would expect it, I guess, for an IL world record, but still, like, this shit's really hard. So, I don't want it to, you know, seem like, you know, 30 FPS doesn't, you know, it is very hard. you know, the frame rate is not consistent. One more thing I should say. You don't want to play on PAL here, because it'd be a 25 FPS. And you seriously, right? If you think that 30 FPS is bad with this game, because of how it doesn't, convert it properly, you seriously have not seen 25. It is way worse. I'm not even joking. 25 looks like fucking, 15 or 20. It's really, really bad. Like, there's such a massive time gap. Like, okay, when these characters descend, they descend a certain number of units per frame. So SpongeBob and Patrick are descending more per frame than they would be at 60 FPS. But at 25 FPS, there's an even more inconsistent, timing difference in between each frame. And it makes it look so, jaggy and bad. It's like, seriously now, words really can't do it justice. It looks horrible. And it makes it so inconsistent and, again, muscle memory, you really need to let muscle memory take over here, but you can't because the frame rate's so fucking bad. So you do not want to use 25 here, you want to use 30. PAL 50 is probably fine if you want to play on Xbox. The PAL 50 is probably fine. But yeah, I did my run on 60, but yeah. So, yeah, there isn't much to say here, so this is ranked a little low because, again, it hasn't... Out of all of the sliding and driving levels, I mean, it had a change in 2020, but all of the other levels have had changes since then, you know? Like, so far, Knucklehead, I think it was found in, 2021, and that one I showed you earlier, the really fucked one, that was found in 2022. Sandwich driving, that Sandwich Out of Bounds, I think was found in 2021. It might have been 2020, but I think it was 2021. And, Hawk Out of Bounds was found in 2021. And as for Weenie, going through the oil and nitroing just before the ramp were found in 2022. I say well, actually it might have been 2021, but if it wasn't, it was late 2021. Whereas this one hasn't, not only has it just not, nothing's been found for a really long time, and, these jumps are just... I know they did a harder version of the jumps, but these jumps in general have existed for a long time. But the other thing as well is that, the run is the easiest out of all of them after you pass this trick. So, after you reach 18 seconds in, this becomes the easiest sliding and driving world record out of the 7. Because even, of course the trick is really, really hard, but it only has effectively one, because the damage boosting stuff is still just, on top of it's still in the middle of doing the same shit. So it has, one trick, and it's really early in, and granted, it's not a smooth 30, but it's still 30, and as soon as you hit 18 seconds in, it's Weenie is harder to drive through, and it lasts longer. One thing you need to think about is how long these runs are. And I should have mentioned this earlier. If a run is long, you're way more likely to choke. It could even be 4 minutes of or 10 minutes of something quite easy, and you're still pretty likely to choke if 9 minutes in there's a tough corner cut, the longer they are, the more likely you are to choke. And we haven't seen super long levels so far or anything. Well, actually, Weenie is the longest one, or the second longest one, I believe. No, it's the third longest one. My bad. Although, in theory, it'd be second, second longest, but you'll see later. Yeah, that's it's just good corner cutting and stuff, yeah, but the driving levels are harder to, steer the paddy wagon and stuff. And the other sliding levels have a little more going on. Well, technically, one of them is a bit of a novelty thing, but I would move on to the next one, but I desperately need a shit, so I'm going to pause the recording, and I will see you in a minute. Okay, I'm back. That was very much needed. I realize I need to be quieter, so yeah, apologies for that. If I'm quiet, but it's gotta be done. It's 1 AM. So we were just busy talking about Gesk. Don't need to talk about Gesk anymore. Now we can move on to the next one. Rubber Dub. In 26 seconds. By Latte. This, is the 3rd of September. Shortly after the trick got found. It got found on August 31st. Called Rubber Dub Skip. So, this was being played, even though, you know, the things I said were guessed. Like, about just having one trick and then good movement for the rest of it. This is even more so the case, but... yeah, basically, look at this. That was kind of ridiculous, wasn't it? Basically... if we just get a replay on that first. What you're doing, essentially, is pushing yourself against the rail and building up speed with it so that you pass the rail so that you get a good angle for the other side. Like, that's why you go up against the rail, to have a good angle. And then you build up speed on it to get enough speed. When you try to come over here normally, like, without the rail, the game, like, has, like, a force that, like, pushes you to the right. However, of course, this allows us to get around it. This is quite different to how it's done RTA, and once again, I should have gotten an example of what it looks like RTA. We do Rubber Dub 2 in the route, so the time challenge is technically identical, but obviously we're going to play more safe in the run. So this turn right here is a 1 frame. And this is 60 FPS, although Latte might have played on PAL. Nope, in TSC, so it's a 60th of a second input. And like we said earlier, it's not even a consistent 60. So... yeah, so you get the 1 frame, and then you kind of stop building up speed here. And then you need to, like, turn the tub at, like, the perfect times and all that shit. And then, this is another 1 frame. This frame, about here, is the 1 frame. And it's called wood frame, or wood 1 frame. And basically, what it means is that it preserves your speed. So, if you don't get that frame, you'll just plop onto the ground and lose, like, all your speed. But if you get the wood 1 frame, then you'll preserve your speed. And that is necessary for a 26. So, you need that 1 frame. So you need, like, 1 frame, and then you need the setup, and then you need another 1 frame. Well, how hard can that be? But, like, dude, it's really hard. If I could give an example, I would like to use my no pull storage P as an example, and we can use Rubber Dub 2 as well. What is it? So, keep in mind, I do it faster than, like, anyone else RTA, and this would be a much better, like, showing of how to actually do this. So that is much easier to comprehend. So obviously RTA, if you miss this jump, then you get fucked. You have to lose like 7 or 8 seconds because you need the hand to grab you then. But even just not factoring that, RTA, you generally want to do 2 1 frames because you want to build up more speed. Some people, many people, jump to as far back as possible and then hold right for like this entire duration to build as much speed as possible. But here I don't do that. You can see, like, Latte started building up speed around here, whereas I am building it, like, way earlier, like, around here. And that was a little unnecessary. I lost maybe, like, half a second over what I could have realistically done. But yeah. Then, you know, I start holding, like, up, and then, yeah, I do, like, a full jump, and then I start turning, like, down left. And I don't get wood, so I lose like half a second, but I don't need it. It was a little sketch, but I didn't need it. So this is what a good setup looks like, RTA, like a pretty good setup. That second 1-frame jump is worth it, because building up speed is that hard. I don't want to spend like 15 minutes trying to explain to you like why building up speed is so hard, or like why building up only a tiny bit of speed is so hard. Like, all of your jump spacing, all of your angles need to be perfect, and I just don't think a lot of people will be able to comprehend how hard it actually is. Like, with guess jumps, I feel like I was able to get the point across, but with this, I just don't think I'll be able to fully get it across. Even this is hard. You wanna know how hard this trick is, right? I've put well over 6,000 attempts into this trick. I was grinding it 100 times every day. Just grinding it. Sometimes even 200. There were times where I did it even 400, 500 times. But most of the time, I was doing it 100 to 200 times a day. And the consistency would flop constantly. You know, go to like, it'd be like 70, and then the next day it'd be like 46, and then it'd be like 58, and then it would slowly build itself back up, and then it'd just plop again after hitting 70 something. I just used to do that constantly until it finally worked. But yeah, I had to suffer with that for fucking weeks. But yeah, this was a pretty good attempt at the trick, and I still didn't get wood 1-frame. But yeah, if this setup took this long, and I know consistency is not favored in ILs, but like, seriously now, I do this faster than anybody else, and I put like over 6,000 attempts into the trick, and it is so worth it to do a second 1-frame over building up like no speed. But yeah, also the trick is like infinitely harder than it looks. It looks like an easy trick, it's really not. It's so bad. So hopefully that gives you a better understanding. So again, 1-frame, building up like as little speed as possible, turning at like the perfect times possible, and then changing angles at the perfect time, you're jumping at the perfect time. This is all, like, basically perfect. The thing is with rubber dub skip, right? The more speed you build, the more leniency you can have. I had some leniency. And if you get wood 1-frame, you get even more leniency. But when you build up such a little speed, to the point where you literally need the wood 1-frame to make it across, like, that's when it just gets ridiculous. And my gold in Rubber Dub 2 does have that. I do accidentally do it too fast. And I only got a gold because I got the 1-frame. And, like, yeah, this really can't do it. I tried grinding this for, like, half an hour. Right? You know what I ended up getting? A super high 27. And this is a 26. And half an hour might not seem like a lot. But, like, I'm more experienced with the trick than anyone else by a massive long shot. And I still, like, well, that's my IL time. My gold is like a super low 28, but my movement was slightly sloppy after I got the trick. I could have gone to 27, but I'll never actually beat the gold because I'll never intentionally just build up like such a little speeds where I need the wood 1-frame. But yeah, the rest of this is just super basic movement. Just good corner cutting. You do have some frames of leniency to get a 26, but you will be getting like a super high 26 basically. Like that's, you know. Okay, but that wasn't super high. That was like a mid-high-ish, like 0.7, but or like 0.65 maybe. But yeah, so you do have leniency, but not with the trick itself, just with the movement at the end. So the reason why I'm placing this above guess jumps is because honestly, when it's all said and done, this is probably harder than guess jumps, and also it has the novelty of being a recent trick. If it was just as old as guess jumps, I'd probably place guess 2 above it because it's longer. But with Rubber Dub, it has the novelty of being new, and it might be harder than doing those perfect. It's hard to say. Latte would have to decide that. He's gone world records for both Gesk and Rubber Dub, but I feel like this is probably harder. And granted, you have a surprising amount of leniency at the end. Oh yeah, I forgot to say earlier, by the way, that 101 Gesk is, like, not possible. No chance. Again, you've been doing the same shit for years. There's, like, nothing else we could possibly do without, like, new tech or whatever. But with our current understanding, 101 just has 0 chance of being possible. And same with rubber dub skip. 25 has no chance of being possible. I seriously, in a task, I really don't think it's possible. But yeah. Just look at this shit, dude. And you can reset pretty quickly, but dude, it's so fucking evil. So bad. But at the end, though, it is easier than Gesk. Which I know I said, like, oh, the ending movement to Gesk is, like, the easiest out of all these, but it is this one, technically. But would one frame will decide that? Like, how, you know, because otherwise you just lose, like, half a second off the bat. But yeah, so basically it's only really ranked above because it's comically short. It used to be one of the longer ones in the run. Well, I say longer. No, it wasn't one of the longer ones, but it was pretty average length. It was like a 206. And it had other strats. But yeah, it's just been completely obsoleted. I could probably, like, really quickly show what it was like back then. 206, or I mean 205 even. Wait, 203? 203, what the fuck? Okay. So this isn't gonna be super in-depth or anything, but we basically, Rubadub had been solved since like 2013. About 2013. So here was this trick, Dumb Jump. It's called Dumb Jump because it was thought to be an inconsistent trick when it got found, but no, it's actually pretty consistent, actually quite easy. This skips a huge section of track. You're saving like 35-40 seconds. And it's probably like 30 these days. It might even be less than that. There's another trick called Bridge Jump, but it's not done. It was never done in like certain categories or ILs. Basically, this one is just going high up and not too high up, and then getting coyote frames. So, coyote frames, obviously, like, you have a long time before the game updates, like, oh shit, you're off the ledge. So you can travel for a while and still, like, double jump. And then you just have, like, some good, really good corner cutting and stuff. And then there was a one-frame jump here. One-frame turnaround, just like in Gask, but this one's easier because, you know, you don't have as shitty of an angle for it. And then the ending movement was pretty basic. 202, I have no idea if it would have been possible. It probably not, but I don't actually. But this is a lot faster. This is the, you know, Gask was the fastest sliding and driving level since what feels like the dawn of time, right? But obviously that changed ever since this happened. So the longest sliding and driving IL is a 308, and the shortest is a 26, and that is insane. You would have never thought this before. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned this earlier. We don't allow pre-run setup, by the way. That only matters in like one way to do a ball storage. It really doesn't matter, but yeah, like. Well, that's another reason why magnetic pickup wouldn't be allowed, is because it's technically pre-run setup. The only, like, pre-run setup you're allowed to do is to even get to these, time challenges in the first place. But yeah, this time is really, really, really good, but that is all there is to it, is the first few seconds, really. But don't get it twisted, it's fucking crazy. So yeah, that's, most of the time challenges done, but we have two more. We'll be looking at the final driving level and then the final sliding level. Now, this one was done on the 9th of October by Vaz. So Vaz was getting, like, a lot of sorry. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. He was getting a lot of records. Now, this one I might have the most to say about, potentially. This is another 3-lap system one, where it's fastest to take the same path on every lap, just like Weenie. But this one is even harder to drive through than Weenie. And it has skips, and they're very, 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 very hard. So it's harder to drive through, and it has actual skips that are really hard, so. Although Weenie is a 244 and this is a 245. Can you get 244 in this? We will find out later, but. Yeah, here's lap 1. So you might have saw that there was a off-road on the left. That is fast to go through, but not on lap 1. Especially because you're going to immediately use this nitro that you get, and you're going to do a trick called Sunday Jump. That was pretty cool. So the reason why it's called Sunday Jump is because back in the day, sliding and driving levels didn't have that many strats to them. And when this was found, I think back in 2018 by Kyoku, it was just known as, like, the Sunday Jump, you know? You can't actually jump in sliding and driving levels, but it's more like a rock hop. I guess you could call it, like, rock hop, maybe, but yeah, we just still call it Sunday Jump. Because the level's called Sunday Driving. So what it is that you nitro, you know, build a, nitro a little before the ramp, then bounce off of this rock and make it over to the other side. Now, what is the problem with this? Well, other than the fact that... Also, this is in TSC GameCube. Other than the fact that, you know, you need to do it very optimally, it's also just really hard. Like, again, the sandwich is hard to turn. And, like, this was a pretty good bounce. I don't know if I mentioned this, by the way, but Vaz got this time. So, we are going to look at this, right? So he gets, like, hardly any bounce off of this. And he doesn't make it over to the other side much. There is an invisible wall. Not a big one, but there is an invisible wall above the fence. So he did make it with a little bit of leniency, but not much. Less than it looks. I mean... Also, again, with how good the jumps actually are, they can highly vary. You can get some pretty nasty bounces, and that isn't as likely on NTSC GameCube. But that being said, you also get less of a bounce off the rock, which makes it harder to make it over to the other side. There were times even on NTSC Xbox where you just get, like, no bounce practically off the rock, and you just get fucked. Like, I'm not claiming to be super consistent, but I have done logs, 100, you know, like a Robot Skip, I've done logs of this trick on NTSC Xbox, and I get the trick like 60% of the time. So, and on GameCube it's even harder because, well, because of you know, the lack of height that you can get. But you can also get thrown like pretty far to the right, or you can like bounce off the rock in a weird way. That nitro is not fast, unfortunately, by the way. So yeah, getting this even just in general is pretty damn hard. Right? So that's been established. That's pretty fucking hard. Also, on lap 1, this thing will be in the way. So you have to, like, drive this way, but it is harder than it looks. It's harder to get a good angle, and, yeah, it's just hard to get a good... It's slightly harder than it looks. However, it actually saves more time on lap 1 to do Sunday Jump than lap 2 and 3, because... On lap 2 and 3, you already have nitro, so if you fuck it up and you're in the off-road, you can recover it. But this saves so much time. Oh, and also, you can, even if you weren't doing Sunday Jump, you could, like, nitro away from, so that you don't have to go on the ramps and be really slow. But on lap 1, you would have to go on a couple ramps, which would be slow. So, even though that thing is in the way and you have to drive off-road, it actually saves an extra half a second on lap 1 than it does on lap 2 and 3. In case you know, I'm just saying that in case you wanted to do, like, ILs or whatever, like, but you only wanted to do the trick, like, once or whatever, like, you don't want to do it on lap 1 anyway, because it's, like, right there, but yeah, no, it saves more time on lap 1, I'm just letting you know. This turn is surprisingly hard. It's pretty harsh. I didn't really go into enough detail about Weenie having really harsh turns, but Sunday's turns aren't as harsh, but they're pretty fucking harsh. I think even slowed down a tiny bit there, but I think it was probably optimal to do that. And then he's gonna take the shortcut here. No reason not to go for it, saves a lot. No skill, and then we come up to the big trick. You thought Sunday Jump was hard? You haven't seen anything yet. This is way worse, right? Get ready for Spiral Skip. It was discovered in 2021, I think by Vaz. It is completely consistent on NTSC Xbox, although I do remember the setup being abysmal until I figured out how to make the setup good. But on GameCube, because you get no height, it's fucking horrible. Have a look. That was awful. I mean, the attempt was good, but that trick is awful. So, basically, you get, like, no height, as you can see here, right? When you bounce off it, like, look at how little height. Like, Oz is getting, like, basically only a little more than he needs. He's only barely above the fucking ground, right? And there is a lot that can go wrong with this trick. So, the visual cue is to nitro to the right, but if you're too far away or too close, you can miss it. And then, you want a good angle, right? It's possible to, you see this green, this grass over here? It's possible to bonk off of it and get a massive height boost and lose lots of time from that. It's also possible to get stuck here in between the dirt pit, the dirt and the ramp, and get stuck a bit. It's possible to just miss the trick entirely and, you know, still be in bounds around the spiral. And it's possible to land out of bounds here, and then you have to try and make your way back in bounds, which there are 2 ways of doing it, but you can also soft lock while out of bounds is stupid. Yeah, it's really bad. But luckily, it went basically perfect. But seriously now, this trick is way worse than Sunday Jump. It's way worse. I asked runners before, like, how often were they getting fast spiral skips? How often were they getting fast Sunday Jumps? And I asked a bunch of runners, and I think the average consistency for getting a fast spiral skip after a bunch of grinding was like 1 in 5. So, 1 in 5, and then you have to do on all 3 laps. So 1 in 5, 1 in 25, 1 in 125, and then that's multiplied by the Sunday jumps, and then that's not even factoring nerves. Again, this is the longest driving aisle in the game. You're likely to choke. Like, the turns are hard, the nitro management's hard. It's all hard, and you know, spiral skip is just a huge cog in that, but it isn't the only factor, of course. But yeah, no, that spiral skip was really good. Did he slow down a tiny bit then? I think he might have slowed down a tiny bit. I can't tell if I was lag or not, but either way. Now he's just making it through to the end of the lap. This movement's pretty basic. The gumballs can fuck you, but usually it's fine. Now on lap 2, you're gonna want a nitro here. He grabs health. The reason why is because GameCube runners have said that the paddy wagon looking different depending on its health can be distracting when attempting spiral skip. So even though it loses time, just for the sake of consistency, he grabbed the paddy. He wasn't worried about getting 0 health, he was worried about the paddy wagon looking different and fucking with his visual cue. No other driving level is like that. This is the only one. This path opens up on the right, but it's really slow. You never, like, actually want to go there. He goes for a second Sunday jump. That was beautiful. If anything, that was better than the lap 1 by a little bit. So his lap 1 Sunday jump was a tiny bit unoptimal, but this one was really good. Like, basically perfect. His turn was pretty good, too. Maybe could have been a teeny tiny bit faster, but no, it's pretty fucking good. You can't really complain about that. So far, this run is looking pretty damn good. The worst thing so far was this lap 1 Sunday jump, and he probably just lost like 0.2 or 0.1. Like, it's probably like 0.2. Or grabbing the health, he also lost like a small amount of frames from that. But then Disaster Strikes, I believe. Yep. Oh yeah, I forgot to say as well, it's also possible to fall into the pit. A lot of people don't even know this pit exists. The one underneath. But yeah, no, that exists. If you get, like, really bad gumball luck, it's possible for the gumball to knock you back into the pit. But yeah. So, he fucked up a little bit there. It's because he didn't turn left soon enough, I believe. So he kind of bonks off of it. He didn't get a huge height boost. Probably because it's on NTSC GameCube, but he still lost time. In fact, did I see him nitro before he even landed on the ground? Because you, like, never want to actually intentionally do that. That's pretty damn slow. Yeah, no, he nitroed a little too early. Only lost frames, but still. So the whole thing was just slightly unoptimal. I mean, that was fine. But he lost maybe, like, 0.3 or something off of that. So far, he's lost, like, nearly a second, probably. He's lost like 0.6, 0.7, something like that, compared to like playing absolutely perfect. But it's okay, we still got lap 3. Again, I'm probably not going to spend like 10 hours on this, because words really can't do it justice of how hard this actually is, but... Not as hard as Knucklehead with that strat, but you gotta understand that Knucklehead hasn't been done with that strat, whereas this has been done with these strats. There's no more theoretical optimizations to make in terms of, like, new strats or whatever, so it's just about better movement. That was slightly unoptimal, but it was I mean, you can't really complain about that. At most, lost, like, 0.1. I don't think that Nitro was... I think he needed to turn a little more before using it. I feel like it was slightly unoptimal. I could be wrong, though. But that's what I think. Again, it's hard to tell with, like, GameCube. He lost a tiny bit of frames there, I believe. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, lost, like, 2 frames or something. But it's okay. He's got a spiral skip. And that was, like, a teeny tiny bit less optimal than lap 1, I think, because... Go back a bit. It just seems like he gets pushed a little more to, like, the right instead of forward. I think he lost a tiny bit of time, it's hard to say. Yeah, now he's just trying to burn through his nitros. And then he gets slightly knocked by the popsicle sticks. Also, I believe on GameCube, I'm pretty sure you can nitro through the popsicle sticks. I think. But not on Xbox. So we could have saved a few more frames there by, like, nitroing, but instead he, like, tried to touch the corner, kind of, and just got fucked for it. Didn't lose that much, but probably at least lost, like, 0.1. And then you want to always preserve the final nitro for the ending. Now, if I remember correctly, I think I try to calculate, like, based off of people's statistics, or, like, how often they're getting the tricks, you know, multiplying by 3, multiplying all the things together. I think I know this isn't true luck odds, but I think I roughly worked out that the odds of, like, nailing all the tricks perfectly was, like, in, like, 1 in, like, several thousands. And that's not factoring choking and, like, gumballs and, like, just things like that. Technically, even external factors, like, now you forgot to locally record, or, like, your controller dies halfway through, or your power goes out, you know, technically, you know. Anyway, this is such a fucking statistical anomaly to get this shit perfectly. But basically, I'm pretty positive the 244 is possible. Now, I think you'd have to play nearly perfect, but if you played absolutely god-tier perfect tasks, you could probably get, like, a mid-244. So, you have, like, 0.4 seconds of leniency in the span of over 2.5 minutes. That is not realistic, but I feel like it could be RTA... It could be possible RTA potentially. This shit is really, 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 really bad. Fucking Spiral Skip is fine on OG, but even Sunday Jump is kind of hard. And keep in mind, right, in Sunday 1, when you follow Goofy Goober, you only have 2 opportunities to do Spiral Skip, and 1 opportunity to do Sunday Jump. Okay, let me say it like this, right? In 100% in all tokens, there is a segment called Sunday 2. You do the time challenge, where you do both those tricks 3 times, then Ring. Ring has a couple bullshit parts, and you need to keep in mind of nitro management. It's overall not hard, it's just like a time waster in between. Fuck with your muscle memory. Then, in the Macho Time Challenge, you just do the exact same thing as the regular time challenge. So, when you factor that, it is the hardest segment in the game. The hardest, like, in a speedrun, the hardest segment in the game. And yes, we do 2 time challenges, and, you know, it's still pretty hard, but, like, dude, on GameCube, it's harder to do this shit on GameCube once than to do it on Xbox twice, because Spiral Skip goes from being, like, a 1 in 5 or something to literally, like... It's like, I get it, like, at least, like, 80% of the time fast. Like, fucking nuts. Like, again, I'm not gonna spend like 10 hours on this because there's just no real doing it justice. But this shit is really, really, really hard, and other than that strat and Knucklehead, it probably is the hardest sliding and driving level in the game. You know, the other levels had it pretty bad, you know, Gesk and stuff, but, like, you need to do these same tricks 3 times each, right? Imagine you're on lap 3, and you go for Spiral Skip, and you just slightly fuck up, and then you just get a 245, and your efforts were for nothing, because we don't use milliseconds. Like, that is what... That is the position that these runners are in. They can play so good, and then, like, keep in mind, you already nailed all those other strats every other time, and then at the last possible opportunity, you fuck it up. You're gonna feel horrible. With guest jumps, you just reset and reset and reset. You only do it once. But this is different. This is in its own other league, and it's more than twice the length. And, again, words really just can't do it justice, but this shit is... Yeah. No wonder 244 has been achieved. But I think it's just barely possible RTA. I believe a human could barely do it. But it would take potentially hundreds of hours of grinding. This is obviously all assuming that nothing else gets found. We have an out of bounds, but it's so slow because you're driving on, like, dirt the entire time. And even if you weren't... We have Spiral Skip, so it wouldn't be fast anyway. Spiral Skip, by the way, saves 8.5 each, I think. So yeah, Sunday went from a pretty, you know, before, you know, in like early to mid 2018, it was really, really basic, and people hated this level. But Spiral Skip and Sunday Jumps have just made it so much more interesting RTA, and especially in ILs. It's really transformed the level from being one of the worst ones to one of the best. But I still rank it as second place. The reason is because perfection still has not been achieved at the time, whereas perfection has definitely been achieved, spoilers, in the final time. Also, in the Heavy Iron Best Times video, I probably would place it last, because I would also be factoring Heavy Iron's times, and Heavy Iron, like, very obviously did tricks at the time that they got. Because it got, like, a 333 or something, and that's just, like, the best you can get without tricks is like a 408 or some bullshit like that, or like a 409. So, yeah, like, that's why. But, so I probably should have played Sunday last, but it's fine. How long have I been recording for? An hour 37? Yeah, these videos always go longer than I fucking know. That is my Discord. Like a boss. Did I show anything bad? Nah, it doesn't look like it. Okay, that's cool. Alright, now for the final one. Rock Slide. This is the longest sliding and driving IL. It used to be in contention with Sunday for the longest. I think Sunday was longer and then shorter and then longer again, but now it's no contest because of Spiral Skip. But Rock Slide is very long, but very interesting. So this is set by Latte. It is PAL, because there'll be 1 frames, and to do them in 50 FPS is at least a little nicer than doing them in 60. But yeah. So, this was set on November 5th, 2022. I like how none of these have been set in 2023. And immediately we're gonna get some action. Immediately. Now, this is a very difficult variation of a trick that already exists. But this is a much harder version, and god damn it, I should have had a video for it. Let's go and have a look. Obviously I know my PB got it, so we can have a look. So, when you go into Rock Slide in Rock Slide 1, you spawn in the level in midair, and that allows you to, like, jump backwards, basically. It's called Skydive. So, this was found in, I believe, April 2020 by Sky, and that's partly why it's called Skydive, because it's, like, kind of a play on Sky, but also you do literally, like, you pretty much die from the sky. So, basically, you jump backwards and you land here. However, in an IL, it saves less time and is way harder because you don't spawn in midair. That's the problem. That's why it's so hard. So you know what you do instead? You do 1 frames. Well, you do a 1 frame. And then you need to build up some speed, right? And then you need to, with like an amazing angle, just like fucking barely make it over to this side. Like just barely. It's like you gotta do it. There's like almost no leniency. It's so hard, right? So already, like, this level is extremely reset heavy. Okay, well, guest jumps are too, and that's even later in. Rubber Dub Skip is super reset heavy. How does this one get separated? Well, it's a 308. So obviously, first of all, there's a lot more going on, and second, this level, again, it's so easy to choke. This level is fucking choke central, and at the very end is a hard trick. So yeah, it's choke central because it's 3 fucking minutes long. We don't really need to see this, but basically, this is, okay, well actually, you're basically traveling out of bounds trying to avoid Hans triggers. They're invisible, but if you get grabbed by Hans, like, obviously it's over. Even RTA loses loads of time. But as you can see, I'm using, like, this, you can kind of see, like, a little, like, side, but, you know, like, you can see, like, kind of, like, where it gets darker. Like, I'm kind of cruising on that because it's quite safe, while still being relatively optimal, at least RTA, like, full game runs. You basically cut in the corner for a while. But in this, Latte is playing pretty damn risky. We can't cut the corner this hard, or else we get a bad angle at the beginning. Because, you know, Latte gets to start from here, whereas we start, like, higher up here. Just, yeah, basically, see the Latte just gets, like, a super good line over here. And he's adjusting a little bit, so he's losing, you know, just a couple frames, but... Now, so you see this brown dark patch here? Runners go to the right of that, and Latte is going way more to the right because it saves more time. And this is pretty fucking risky because he's right next to a Hans trigger, I believe. And then basically the way that you end this trick, you drop down a lot. And then you drop down, and then you, wow, that was actually really fast, what the fuck? How did he do that, actually? Dude, I don't know how he did that. I don't know how he built up, like, such a little speed. And still, like... Dude, that was crazy. Because, as you can see when I do it... Again, I'm more to the right, and then when I drop, you build up more speed, but Latte was just able to just make it across, like, super easily. That was also very optimal. This trick may seem really slow, but it saves, like, at least in Rock Slide 1, it saves, like, 9 seconds or something of going around. In this, it probably saves more like 7 or something, EIL. Then you're gonna see some corner cutting. And then, this was found in, like, 2022. Way back in the day, we used to go all the way over to this green lamppost, and then I think we started going to this flower, and now we go to this flower. This isn't hard, it's probably, like, the easiest part of the entire level, or at least the easiest trick. But you just go to the left a bit to avoid, like, Hans triggers, although Latte actually cut it pretty close, I feel like. The strat is very worth it in full game runs, though, because you also get manlies from it. Also, to put into perspective of how hard 308 is, like, Latte tasked a 308 and was hardly able to get one, and he did this one legit, so he played, like, almost as perfect as you possibly can, which is why 307 is nowhere near possible. It is the most perfect out of all of them. It has, like, the least, like, little mistakes, because the most optimal one... Okay, well, it was Gask. Gask was the most optimal, and Rubber Dub Skip. But they're very, very short. Other than the ones that are really short, the most optimized one is Weenie, and even that one had, like, a teeny tiny mistake in lap 1. This has, like, basically nothing. Like, it's fucked. I will say, though, I think he tried to jump over the TNT and missed. That would have lost a couple frames, I think. And now here's another trick. This is known as a super jump. Now, going this path is still faster, even if you don't get the 1 frame, but obviously in a run you want the 1 frame. So, when you hit the correct frame, you press A, and you get a huge speed boost. And it saves, like, 3 or 4 seconds of it not getting it. Otherwise, you're gonna, like, slowly fall down. So, that's another 1 frame, so that's 2 1 frames. And obviously, like, really good movement and shit. And that one's over 1.5 minutes in, so it's pretty hard. If you miss it, you're fucked. Like, runs it over, you know? You could buffer it on Xbox, but Latte did his time on GameCube, but Xbox would technically be more optimal for this level. Because you could buffer the inputs, but... yeah, nobody's done it. Then he's gonna damage boost off. We can't afford the damage boost in full game runs because we need manlies. But yeah, that's a good damage boost. We need these manlies in particular. Like, you just skip like a ton of manlies because obviously it doesn't need them. And then normally we grab that Krabby Patty, but he's not going to, which I believe is a bit faster. Obviously cutting these corners really well. He just has to play to a higher standard than we do for like full game runs. And then here's the final trick that I was talking about earlier. This is another super jump, and it is pretty much the exact same as the first one. But in my opinion, this one gives you a slightly worse visual cue. Also, it's so late in that it's effectively harder than the other one anyway, because it's so easy to choke, and it loses more time to miss, which doesn't matter for ILs, but it does matter for full game runs, but we buffer it anyway. And then after that, you go to the right side because it's faster than the left side by a second. Fun fact. And then you damage boost off of this, which we don't have room for, and then yeah, that is risky. In full game runs, you definitely just want to go, like, jump off, like, around here, but instead he just, like, yeah. That's quite risky, I feel like, at least to me. So, honestly, I wouldn't consider this, like, as hard as Sunday. But this one stands, again, we're factoring a bunch of things. It is, other than like the super short ones, it is the most objectively optimized. He probably lost like fucking, I noticed, if I'm even correct, I noticed like, well, like 5-6 frames of like potential time save. And he got a pretty high 308. It is the longest one, so it's easy to choke, and what I appreciate about it is that it doesn't have a 3-lap system. You know, as cool as Sunday is, it is still doing the same thing 3 times. It relies on the same, like, 40-something or whatever, like 40 seconds of content on the same exact thing on every lap to interest you. After you've seen lap 1, barring minor mistakes, you've seen all the laps. Rock Slide has a unique distinction from beginning to end. Like, it has 2 super jumps. That's as similar as it gets, you know, everything, you know, it's a lot more unique. And you can say that as well about Sandwich Driving, Knucklehead, and Gesk and Rubber Dub. But first of all, Sandwich Driving at this point is basically less interesting Knucklehead. And second, none of those levels are nearly as long as this one. And third, this level, what I also like about it, you know, because Rubber Dub and Gesk just have one hard bit, whereas each individual thing in this level in Rockslide is less hard by quite a lot, but it adds up, you know? It isn't just get the thing and then have standard movement and then you win. This is actually, like, distributing the difficulty throughout the entire track. You know, Sandwich Driving, it's boring for like a minute, and then you get to do a trick, but then it's boring for another minute, you get to do a trick, and it's boring again. This is other than, like, shortly after Skydive, other than that bit, it's, like, interesting, like, the whole way through. And, like, again, like, its length just really, you know, and Rock Slide, you know, Rock Slide has evolved quite a bit, you know. It used to be quite different, so yeah, for such a long level, it has had a lot of changes, and it's still really long. But it used to be way longer. So, when it's all said and done, if a perfect Sunday time were achieved at per at the top, if a perfect Knucklehead time were achieved at per at the top, but as it currently stands, this is the most optimized one, other than like the two really short ones. And you gotta factor like the potential to choke. You gotta appreciate how it's not just like the same thing like 2 or 3 times in a row. It's actually like different while also being long and interesting, and that is why I rank it at the top. So that is, yeah, it's basically all I wanted to say. Hopefully this has you appreciating these sliding and driving world records. I was thinking of making a video about the evolution of these levels. I might do that, but probably not anytime soon if I'm already making this one. Although this is just about what already exists, to be fair, except for Rub-a-Dub. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.